Sonic Racing Crossworlds is amazing, but it does have a few issues. So let's talk about the beta experience overall. So first and foremost, I think the most important thing to talk about in the beta is that, again, this is a beta. There's going to be bugs, there's going to be probably online issues, and there's probably going to be unfinished aspects, which the game literally warns you about on the title screen, by the way. And I will say, not all betas are like that. I think sometimes betas truly are just to let people play and like stress test the server even though they're already confident. But for this game, it truly does feel like Sonic Team is testing a beta of a game rather than just like, hey, hop in the game, guys. I think of the most recent beta, which is the Elden Ring Night Rain game. That game comes out in like 2 months and a beta just dropped. But like, we don't know when this game is coming out, this Sonic Racing game, and they're testing a beta that has the bugs. It has a few slight online issues, and it has just some unfinished and unpolished things like in the menus and whatnot. So yes, this is a true beta in true form. This is not just a, hey, go have fun, guys, test our game, get hype. It's a, no, test our game beta. So when I judge this game, I'm judging it in that light, that this is an unfinished product, because it is. So with that said, let's talk about all the great things about this game first before I talk about the few little negatives that this game has. So first and foremost, this game is so chaotic and fun. I'm not even just talking about the item balance, which is actually kind of a negative, but I'll talk about that later. But like, just the way the game is extremely fun. The way I can describe it is it feels like Mario Kart Wii mixed with Transformed and a little bit of F-Zero. Now, the F-Zero comparison might sound a little crazy, but the reason I say it's kind of like F-Zero is because the players feel so close together in this game. The tracks are not as wide, and a lot of people are bumping into each other constantly, and it kind of reminds me of F-Zero. When it's done this way, there isn't usually huge gaps in between players like in Mario Kart. They like the top 3 players in Mario Kart. There probably is like a huge gap between them and everybody else in the track. And this game, that's not really the case. You're probably always going to have somebody right in front of you or right behind you. And it truly does feel like you're trying to pass somebody constantly. Maybe unless you're in last place, because if you're in last place, you probably got screwed over by the items. But with that said, the tracks in this game so far are pretty decent. I don't think any of them have been horrible in the slightest, but I do think in this beta, I unfortunately got very unlucky for like the first like almost half an hour of my time playing. I was exclusively getting Ocean Palace. That's not the game's fault. I just don't know why all these Sonic fans kept picking Ocean Palace, or Ocean View, I'm sorry. It all means the same thing. But yeah, I kept getting Ocean View non-stop, and for the cross world, which is the giant portal ring which happens in the middle of the stage, which takes you to a different stage, and we kept getting Dino Jungle like constantly. I don't know why, but the players in my game just kept picking Dino Jungle and Ocean View constantly, and I had to deal with that. But it's a great track, don't get me wrong. Other than Ocean View, we have Metal Harbor, which is a really fire track. We have, I think, Rainbow Garden, I believe it's called. That's a really fun track as well. The museum track is extremely fun. Museum Wonder, I love that. And then we have Water Palace as well, which I'm kind of disappointed with that track a little bit because it doesn't have the Sonic Rush back-to-back. And honestly, it doesn't even look like Water Palace from Sonic Rush, but it's still a cool level. And we also have the stadium level. I forget exactly what it's called, but it's actually a really fun level. It might be one of my favorites to play on just because of the way the track is laid out. And also the crossworlds are, you know, really well implemented in that level and has some great shortcuts. So I enjoy that stadium level a lot. Overall, this game has some pretty good tracks so far, and those are only 6, and there's supposed to be 24 on launch. So I really cannot wait to see what else we have. So moving on to kart customization and character picking, it actually is pretty significant in this game. I'd say more so the kart customization rather than character. The character stats are not that different from each other. It feels like most characters excel in one thing by like 10 more points than most other characters, but like there aren't huge differences. Like Knuckles isn't gonna have like a ginormous amount of power compared to like say Sonic. He may have like 10 to 30 points more, but it's not like a huge gap. And most of the characters have really similar stats, except, you know, again, they just excel in one area more specifically and a little less in another, and it's not crazy. So I feel like the karts matter a lot more in this game because it isn't just about stats, it's also about what kind of karts you do pick. There's speed type, handling type, power type, and acceleration type. And of course there's extreme gear, which is not available in the beta. And I'm gonna be honest, they all do what they sound like. Speed type, they have the fastest cars, but honestly their handling is not as great as the handling kart. Or the power type, you'll probably flinch less from like bumping into players, and you may actually be the one that causes other players to lose their rings when bumping into them. And I think they recover faster from getting hit, but that's not confirmed on my part at least, so I'm not sure about that. Maybe someone in the comments who has also played can let me know if that's true. But they're also probably noticeably slower. But as you know, speed isn't everything in this game because there's acceleration carts which accelerate really fast. So especially with them getting hit, I know for sure they will get back in the pace of the race a lot quicker because they have more acceleration. But I noticed that the power and the acceleration carts, their drifting isn't the greatest. The power carts feels like they're super loose at first and then they just tighten up after 2 seconds. And acceleration just feels like it has a really wide drift. Speed carts are more like the middle ground. And I'd say the handling carts are obviously the greatest at drifting and they feel the smoothest to use if I'm honest. So where I feel like the characters truly do come in is just for min-maxing for those little bit of extra stats. So say like you have an acceleration cart, but you know that like the handling isn't probably going to be the greatest. So picking somebody like Amy just to top off the acceleration just a little bit more might be helpful, but it doesn't feel like it's a huge game changer because it feels more about how it feels to you rather than this is the best cart, at least for now, because I don't know that anybody has found like a Funky Kong and bike situation in this game yet. I will say though, it does feel like the handling and speed type cars though are just genuinely better. Now, you can still win with acceleration carts. I'm sure I'm going to have people in the comments saying, I won with a Eggman and a tank cart. I'm sure you did, but to me, it just feels like they're a bit better and just easier to use. And if they're better and easier to use, then it's probably more than likely they'll end up being the best, because in any competitive game, whatever is the easiest to use and best to use is the thing that gets used the most. Speaking of things we didn't get to use, which is the extreme gear, which I am pretty sad about. But ever since playing the game, I'm not gonna lie, they made me enjoy the carts a lot in this game. I think they knew if they put extreme gear, that's all people would use, and they probably wouldn't get accurate testing of this game if they only had most people using extreme gears, which honestly, that might have been a good call, because I think that would have just had whole lobbies of extreme gear rather than people trying out most of the other carts to discover any balancing problems. But with that said, I'm still very excited to try it when I get that chance. Now I kind of want to move on to the kind of mixed reception area from me, and it's going to be the gadgets. I think the gadget system is actually really cool. It really pushes builds forward. You know, people can just kind of make how they want to play and aid their play style. Like my builds that I usually go for is I have one that builds my boost charge like quicker when you're drifting. I also have one that gives me the faster tricks because it looks cooler and fills my dopamine. And then I have double rings, which just gives me more rings, because rings are very important in this game. And that's also something I want to talk about here is when you bump into a wall or touch anything or somebody bumps into you, you lose rings. And rings are very, very important in this game as they determine how fast you go. And they feel even more useful than the coins in Mario Kart 8. Like, they really determine how much faster you go. But then there's also a gadget in this game where it makes it to where if you have less rings, you go faster in order to circumvent that, but you just have to make sure you're not picking up as many rings. So there's lots of different play styles, and the reason why I'm kind of mixed on it is because I think some things are kind of odd. For example, I think items are extremely broken in this game, which I'll get into that more in the negatives. But there's a gadget in this game that allows you to basically get a third item. And there's also another gadget that lets you switch your 2 items, because you can pick up 2 items in this game, but you can't switch to which one you want to use. And instead you have to use a gadget to be able to do it. And it's on a 5-second cooldown, I believe. And that's kind of odd. I kind of wish you could just do that, because in Mario Kart Double Dash, you could just switch to the item you want to use. And I wish it was something like that. But instead here, you have to waste a gadget slot in order to just do something like that. And it's not necessarily a good or bad thing. I just think other things might need to change in order to make that a bit more, like, I guess, not as broken, or in the switching items case, useful. I kind of wish that was just a mechanic. And one thing that I've seen a lot of people complain about is just bumping into other players and just losing your boost is pretty annoying. But then there's a gadget that literally gives you a boost when people bump into you or you bump into other players. It's either one of those or both of those. I can't remember exactly. But like, there's lots of cool builds you can do. But sometimes I just kind of wish maybe it wasn't a thing, or maybe this was already a mechanic, or maybe something was toned down to make it an even more balanced gadget overall. And speaking of balance, let's get into the bad. The items, there's not much to say outside, yeah, they're broken. It's like Mario Kart Wii style. You can literally get hit by everything in the game and be in first place, and you'll probably end up in last place. No, like, actually the items in this game are a little too ridiculous. The frequency of what items people are getting is insane. You will literally get like 5 people behind you that could get 3 of them getting a buzzsaw, 1 of them getting a monster truck, and another one getting a drill wisp. And they all just do it all at the same time, and you just get destroyed. Like, it's a little too crazy. They need to just change the frequency of the items and also just kind of nerf some of the items. I think like the buzzsaw is ridiculously good. It cuts your car in half and you slow down significantly, or you could literally have half of the game pass you just off of one buzzsaw. I think it's a little too much, and it doesn't really need to slow you down that much in order for you to actually take some loss. And the reason I'm saying this is because the items, yeah, they're annoying, but the gameplay is actually pretty skill based. It is very skill based, I would say. And if you want to compare this to Transformed, that game only had about like 7-ish items, and they weren't really super crazy or like getting in the way of players too much, and you could even avoid a lot of them with skill. In this game, it feels really hard to avoid items with skill. Even in Mario Kart, like, you could avoid blue shells in some games, or in Mario Kart 8, if you have the horn, you can literally destroy a blue shell. There isn't like a lot of defensive mechanics in this game, and literally I've gotten the shield item 1 time in this entire game, in which there is a gadget that lets you get it more often. But why does that really need to be a gadget? I feel like that shouldn't have to be a gadget. That's kind of what I mean by, like, I was mixed on the gadget system a little bit. There's a lot of good stuff, but there's a lot of stuff that feels arbitrary and just kind of taken out of what should be in the base mechanics to make a gadget. But honestly, in my opinion, a lot of this is very, very fixable, and they can just very easily change the balance of the game. So that way, some gadgets probably just either don't exist, and some of these items aren't as crazy. And I think the game will be a lot more skill based and have players that want to adapt and drive better in this game. And something I really do like about this game, though, is that the game doesn't really hold your hand. I don't think this game is super duper casual friendly. It's not like the most competitive thing in the world because, you know, the items are crazy. But like, you actually have to drive well in this game in order to do well. Like, bumping into the wall, you lose rings. Bumping into other players, or I should say getting bumped into by other players, makes you lose rings. And it's very interesting because you actually have to be good at driving. And something that is really addicting in this game is chaining boosts together. So building up your drift meter to get more boosts and chaining the boosts together is extremely fun in this game. And just doing constant tricks every time you're in the air and landing to get like crazy boosts. And the consistency at which you can chain stuff together is just really addicting and fun. And it really just ups the skill ceiling for this game, and I think it's pretty enjoyable. And they changed how the boats work. You can't drift with the boats anymore, which I think is actually a negative. Instead, they changed it to a boost jump. So instead, the drift button just lets you build up a jump in order to get a bigger boost when you land. And it's not horrible. It's only really kind of mid when there's like twists and turns like in Dino Jungle in the boat section. But when you're moving forward, it is pretty nice, and just doing constant jumps and chaining that together is satisfying. Kind of the same thing with the planes, although I think the plane sections are kind of not necessary in this game. It just feels like they're here because they have to be here. But I also do prefer them a little bit more than Sonic Racing Transformed, because I feel like they were a little bit too long in that game. And in this game, they're a lot more streamlined and more of a different kind of way of building boosts and just navigation through the portals and whatnot. So I think overall it's not a horrible addition, but it's probably the weakest transformation here. With that said, since I started to dip back into the positives a bit, let's talk about the graphics. I want to say the graphics in this game are actually really nice. I like the reflections and the levels and whatnot, and all the special effects in the backgrounds and the tracks. They all look really nice. But I noticed on PlayStation 5, it doesn't look like it's actually even in 1080p. The game looks like it's about running 900p or using AMD FSR, which is an upscaler, and FSR1 specifically, which is kind of garbage. I don't think the game looks bad with FSR1 on, and I know it's using that because it's in the, I believe, the agreements. If you look at the licenses and agreements for this game, I think it shows FSR1. So it doesn't look the greatest. It's not the greatest upscaler like NVIDIA's DLSS. And it's the first version of it. And it doesn't look the worst, like I said, but it does look fuzzy and it doesn't look the greatest resolution-wise. But I'm going to be playing this game on PC, and it looks like this game is going to have crossplay because it actually shows that everybody's on a PlayStation in this game. So that makes me assume there's going to be crossplay. And I wonder if it's going to be with Nintendo and PC as well, or probably not, but I'm not sure. We'll see. But hopefully there's crossplay with the PC version because that's where I prefer to play games. And yeah, so that's pretty exciting, and I won't have to deal with bad resolution. But other than that, it feels like this game is running on Unreal Engine 4 and not 5. I'm not sure, but it really does look like Unreal Engine 4. But I could be wrong on that, and I'm glad it is Unreal Engine 4 because Unreal Engine 5 has a lot of problems. You can make it not have problems if you optimize the games pretty well and work around the problems of that engine. But a lot of titles that use Unreal Engine 5 tend to have a lot of stuttering and frame pacing issues and all that kind of stuff. But this game's just fine, and it doesn't look to be on 5, and if it is, then good job, Sega. You learned how to use Unreal Engine 5. Let's go. But all in all, I am thoroughly impressed with Sonic Racing Crossworlds. I wanted a new Sonic Racing game, but I did not want a car game. I wanted a Extreme Gear game. But honestly, this game plays great. The tricks feel cool. The items are pretty unbalanced, but that can change, and I'm hoping it does change. So Sega, if you're listening, please make the items less frequent and better. But yeah, I really did enjoy this, and I'm pretty excited to see how Extreme Gears play because they're said to have a different gameplay style, which is a boost style. So I'm assuming it's probably just going to be like how it was in Riders, but feel how it feels in this game. Because honestly, I'm really curious how they're going to do it. Because if they feel like the cars, then it won't really feel true to what the Extreme Gear is. They should be moving automatically, just kind of how it did in Riders and whatnot. But I don't know. There's lots of ways they could do it, and I could speculate forever on it. But I'm not exactly sure how they're going to do it. So I might as well just wait. And I will say I did have a few disconnects in the beta. Nothing crazy, but overall it is very stable. I didn't really see people lagging much. I think I saw one person lag like once. And overall it's a pretty stable beta, so I'm happy that they got the online good. And hopefully friend lobbies are good and aren't horrible like in Team Sonic Racing, and matchmaking like it was in Team Sonic Racing. And speaking of matchmaking, you cannot play with friends in this beta, but I've managed to be able to do that consistently, and you just press the ready button at the same exact time as your friend, and you'll more than likely get in a lobby with them. Those are my thoughts on this beta. I think this game's going to be good. Don't know when it's coming out. Hopefully soon, but if you guys enjoyed this video and the beta, make sure you drop a like and comment why. And yeah, hope you guys subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.
Well, whatever happens, happens.